Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today we had a patch, and a patch doesn't always just mean a couple of things have been added to the game. A patch usually means some data mining has arrived as well. So I'm here to talk to you guys about that. One little thing about the Glint video we did yesterday that I'm kicking myself for. Well, two things really. Number one is something pretty exciting that I edited into the video and it still never dawned on me, so let's not question how stupid of a man I really am. But if you think about it, because we have a Glint specialization, and Glint was all to do with the Flameseeker prophecies, and the Glint specialization gets to wield a shield, and the legendary shield is the Flameseeker prophecies, it's kind of a cool pair. But the other thing that I really did want to mention that was kind of lacking from that video was this whole idea of the Master of Peace getting the egg. We did get to see firsthand what happened there, or kind of, during Season 2 of The Living World, where we got to revisit the Dragon's Lair. This was all stuff I glossed over yesterday, and most importantly, we find that the egg wasn't just, like, found, it was given to the Master of Peace. And this mysterious stranger that did it could perhaps be E. It seems to me to be a setup for that story, but we're not really sure. The last thing as well, I guess, was Glint's baby dragon. Yeah, it's called Gleam, and that's a name I should have mentioned. Alright, so let's talk about the patch, and then some data mining stuff, including some fairly juicy things. Alright, first of all, let's get the boring stuff out of the way with gemstore boosters. They've totally changed the way that boosters are sold on the gemstore. In some areas, they've actually slashed the price. We all know, for example, nobody cares about actually buying boosters. You're doing it wrong if you were spending your gems on swim speed boosters. Let's just put it that way. These things have now been removed. They've kind of blanketly got rid of the old ones. They'll still be there in your bank if you already owned them, or they'll be there on your character. If you're a bit of a hoarder, if you like holding on to old rare items, maybe keep them, because once they've been consumed, that's it. They're gone. And now we've kind of got these new ones. The new ones do have a lot more flavor to them and are better in general. So there's a heroic booster. They're actually offering a heroic booster to us for free right now in the gem store. And if you grab this thing, it just boosts a whole ton to your experience. It gives you a kill streak booster at the same time. It gives you a PvP booster at the same time. It gives you a gathering booster at the same time. And it even has that cool effect where if your inventory's full when you're gathering, it summons a merchant right next to you, a Black Lion merchant, so that you can then sell stuff and continue gathering. So there's all these crazy little perk things, and they're generally a lot more exciting as boosters now. I know that a lot of people want a way to convert the old kind of boosters into the new ones. They probably want to incentivize you to buy these things. They are now, I'm not going to recommend people buy them myself, but they are a little bit better for the price now. And I guess what they're really trying to do is they're saying, hey, but it's no coincidence that the beta weekend just finished, and now they're saying, look, you really care about experience now, don't you? You realize that here's some boosters. So I think we probably should have seen this coming. You know, this seems like exactly the kind of thing that they could go to NCSoft, for example, and say, hey, look, we can monetize our gem store a lot better now, and we have these things that we sell to people because they actually want it, not just through ignorance because they've just started playing the game and they think it's like every other MMO where this stuff really counts. Another change, before we return to the Backline store, is the personal story was fixed. Yeah, remember when they made a Ra no longer a dungeon, but a story instance that you can solo if you like? Well, they bugged the airship section. I've had this bug on me a long time ago, you know, a year and a half ago, plus this has bugged on me. But the cannon phase was kind of breaking and things just were stalling unless you brought reflects of your own, I believe. Well, now you can deal with them again, and you can actually progress the story regardless of what build you're on. The bug has been fixed, which is very good considering a huge thing I've been looking into is trying to complete the personal story under very difficult challenge circumstances, and it would have sucked to get to the very end and then found that, oh no, there's a bug and you can't progress at all. Yeah, that kind of ruins things. Back to the gem store, there is a new set of Black Lion weapons. Now, these are the Dwayna weapons. Dwayna being the goddess of light and air for humanity, generally depicted as very glowing, blue, white, translucent. I was expecting some of these motifs to be in the weapons, you know, very shiny weapons. Well, it turns out they're not so much. They more mimic her skin color and her golden armor, and so you've got kind of these bluey golden weapons that look okay. I do actually see a lot of value in Black Lion weapons, and just any skins really added to the game that don't have ridiculously insane shiny effects. I think every time that they add something like, say, the Chaos weapons, it does take a little bit of incentive away from people to go for their own legendaries, stuff like that. So these guys aren't, like, swimming in those effects, and a lot of people just prefer that aesthetic, too. It was actually one of the things a lot of people praised about GW1, where many of the effects were very muted, many of the weapons were very realistic, they were rarely oversized, rarely had magic flowing through them, and, you know, only very few were like that, and they stood out like the fiery dragon sword. The skin that caught my eye the most, you will have seen them rolling in the background here, is the shield. The shield reminds me of some old shields I used to run on my Paragon, and considering the Dragon Hunter's a thing, I don't know. Maybe I'll end up picking this up. The problem is Aegis always ruins shields for me on Guardians, and I see no reason to run it on any of my other toons. Maybe Revenant. We'll see how Glint works, shall we? Not too much else was changed with this patch. There was a Mesmer trait fix where you could give gates invulnerability through using your signets, and of course this was a little bit broken. But this patch also included a little tidbit thing in-game. I always like these because they don't tend to show up on data mining posts, so we don't know about them beforehand, and ArenaNet don't put them in the patch notes either, so people are just exploring the world and they'll notice some kind of a weird change. Think on the same level as the Karka hatchlings, or when an NPC randomly starts talking about something new. The location of this is once again in Lion's Arch, and it's in Evan Nashblade's Black Lion Vault. You see this gate here all the way deep down that we can't get past and has been there for a while. Well, now there's an NPC there talking about how there's something going on back there, and there are bloodthirsty boxes trying to kill everyone. And if you look just through the grates, you can see there's a new type of creature in there, these bouncing mimic boxes. There are YouTube videos of people having gone in there. I think they've just basically hacked their way in there, or maybe there's like a really weird map breakout thing I don't know about that gets you into that specific room. There is a way to get very deep into the vaults to like that Asura gate, but I don't think this is that same area. It's like more sealed off than that. But yeah, so they're running around in there and they look really cute. They look a lot like the mini rocks that we had come into the game a while ago, the mini pet rocks. So I'm wondering why these things exist. And in fact, that segues me really nicely into the data mining section of the video, which is probably a little bit more juicy. And this guy is called a mini mimic, and he is going to be a mini pet that we'll be able to buy, just like we could buy the mini rocks sometime next patch, or, you know, in a while, whenever this thing comes out. So the question is, what the hell are these things? Why are they here? I was wondering this with the rock as well. The rock's a really cute mini pet. A lot of people ended up buying the rock, and it doesn't really fit super well into the style of Guild Wars 2, I would say. It's very cartoony, but it's funny and it's cute and it's just a mini, and that's fine, you know. I was never offended by its inclusion to the game. But now that we've got this chest as well, I'm really starting to wonder, where are these things actually going to be used? It's very rare for ArenaNet to make something that only exists as a mini. You know, like we've got the account authentication mini that would seem to be in that category, but it was more like to do with the Chinese release, and I think that's why it's a bit of an anomaly. It would seem to me that whatever minis we get right now are probably being used somewhere in the Heart of Thorns story, no? But then they seem so out of the general world. Can you imagine wandering around one of these luscious jungles, or being down in the cave section, and then you got these cute little rocks rolling around? And now you're walking around trying to open chests and you find mimics, and then they're kind of this style. They're very cute, and it just seems to not fit totally. The number one thing I would have expected them to be coming is obviously Halloween is coming up, and I think these guys fit perfectly into the Mad King's Labyrinth. I'm not saying they don't fit at all into regular Terra, but they fit super well there, and they could be hints at some kind of Mad King content coming up, even including the fact that they've added this hint about the chest in the Black Lion Company. It would seem like maybe there's some kind of an invention from the Black Lion guys, or maybe, you know, some person out in Tyria has deposited what they presumed to be chests into the bank, and now they've got loose. Or they were enchanted somehow. The other thing is they're kind of inanimate objects that have been enchanted, and the devs did kind of-ish tease at the Wizard's Tower maybe having something to do with Heart of Thorns. And if we go crazy conspiracy theory here, you know, the Wizard's Tower, Garenhoff has got a lot to do with animating stuff, and so far only elementals, but maybe. Basically, the question is, why the hell are these things here? You guys can drop some speculation on that below if you like, and we may talk about it a little bit later in the week. Moving on, there are going to be some new outfits as well. Again, this isn't current patch, this is, you know, sometime in the future. Another outfit, and this is actually a cultural outfit. That's important because it means that depending on the race you are playing, it will change completely. It's not like some of these other outfits that they just kind of tweak it a little bit. It's generally the same thing. It's just made to fit, and then, you know, they do a really bad job on Char and it ends up clipping everywhere, for example. These will change very much depending on the culture. And I think that's important for this because they are wedding outfits. Now this is an interesting one, especially for someone like me who's always kind of followed the lore and has liked that the various races have been very culturally distinct. You know, for some of these races, they've barely touched on the idea of having weddings, and now all of a sudden it seems really weird for me to look at this screenshot, for example, someone took showing all the different versions, and look at like a Char wearing a wedding dress. This isn't something that's really been established before. This just seems odd to me, and it's like such a human style. I mean, the female Char is just it's so gaudy, but for that reason, I kind of like it at the same time. On the other hand, you know, I really do like the fact that they tried to have a difference in the cultures. You know, like you can see the Norn male. It's clearly got a lot of woolly pieces to it. It's very thick armor, you know, for being in the cold. You know, this is a part of the Norn culture. Reminds me a lot, in fact, of my Mesmer armor in GW1 that was cultural Norn, and then, you know, it looked a lot more woolly and thick. There is something to be said, particularly on the Char side of things, that it's like Citadel Char, yeah, probably wouldn't be engaging in this kind of thing, but when you look at Char in Lion's Arch, for example, and far away from the Citadel, these Char aren't necessarily a part of the war machine, even though we're kind of led to believe a lot of Char is supposed to be. They're very separate, and, you know, they can be adopting other cultures. Maybe that's why we see it's so, like, human-ish, this female Char armor, because they're kind of looking at female humans and kind of just embracing that style of their culture. That's as close as you can get, though, to making it seem super plausible. So, yeah, it's an excuse for people to wear wedding outfits. It's one of these places where I don't think it gels perfectly with the story, but people like weddings. We had the chapel. If anyone wants to propose to me, all I'm saying is I'm game. Next on the chopping block is the 3rd anniversary of Guild Wars 2. Yeah, it's coming already. What the hell happened to this year? I think because actual stuff has been happening this year. You know, we had a significant chunk of Living Story, and then obviously we've had a lot of Heart of Thorns stuff going on. The year seems to have gone by very quickly. Yeah, we're coming up to the 3rd year. Atmosphere of the community is very different this year. Last year we were strained, we were upset with everything ArenaNet did. We heavily criticized the slightest changes that they decided to prioritize putting into the game. We had no idea about its future or what the hell the devs were working on. This year things are a little different. Of course, some of us a few months ago, even 3 months or so ago, were still maybe expecting a release of the expansion on the 3rd year anniversary. That doesn't seem likely anymore. It's not far away whatsoever, and we've got, still 4 more Elite Specializations to do, a couple of betas to do, and hardcore content still to be established. So these are still big things that I make me fairly confident we're not going to see a release of Heart of Thorns on the release date. But they will do something. The data mining does show, yeah, we'll get a little reward for turning 3 years old on our character. We're going to get a permanent birthday finisher. So last year we had like the birthday blaster. This year it's a finisher. No idea what it looks like. But hopefully it's something significant, and I wouldn't feel too bad stomping people with, you know, my year 3 finisher. I think it's fairly fitting. Last thing to talk about for today is the map count in Heart of Thorns. And this comes from data mining, not necessarily that shaman this time, but by looking at the map bonus reward system, you can actually see a few of the reward tracks that for maps that don't exist yet, like Verdant Brink, and then 3 other maps too. So on the screen right now, you can see some art. Now, this is the art that appears in the background on PvP reward tracks, and you can kind of see that there's a couple of extra ones there. And on this page here, you'll see we've got a couple more maps. The first one is Verdant Brink. Now, Verdant Brink is going to seem kind of old hat to us at this point, and seem like we can just discredit it straight away. And I say that for a few reasons. It's because, yes, we may have only seen a very small amount of the map. What was the number the devs gave? 25% of the map? We may have only seen it a little bit. We've seen only 2 of the meta events, and there's going to be a bunch of others. We've only seen 1 of the layers, and there's going to be 2 others. That said, though, a lot of the map has been revealed. There's been data mining showing off many of the points of interest and extra stuff that's appearing later in the map. We've even had Interior 3D, for those who chose to spoil it for themselves, complete exploration of the entire place. So you got Verdant Brink. Then there are 3 more maps, and that seems to be it for Heart of Thorns. This concerns me greatly, but first let's look at them. So the next one is Jubilant Depth. This sounds very much like it's going to be heavily underground, lots of cavey type systems. We've been hearing a lot about how there's supposed to be underground stuff in the roots. If you think as well about the scale of the underground stuff, specifically in the Silver Waste, and when you look at map breakout videos from places like Verdant Brink, where they really demonstrate the scale of this game. When I say the word cave here, you shouldn't mistake it for some small little tunnel like you'd see, for example, in Gendaran Fields, you know, when you're up in the Shiver Peak area. You should think of giant caverns. You should think of caves which are so large you can glide around in them. Think of the Silver Wastes. And I say this specifically with the mastery track for gliding in mind. The ley line gliding. Like ley lines, yeah, we've seen some example. Again, in Dry Top, we saw an example of a ley line kind of going through in the sky, but still that was a bit of a cave. But what I'm thinking is we're going to go very low down in the Jubilant Depths. We're going to be deep underground. We're going to be in dark places, but these ginormous caverns. And while we're down there, there'll be a lot of ley line activity, and this is where we'll be taking full advantage of gliding around them. Rather than like a jungle map, which has got just ley lines zigzagging all over the place. Though there could absolutely be a part of that too. So there's the Jubilant Depth. Next map is the Auric Basin, Auric Golden. I think it's fair to say that this map is going to be the location of the Golden City, where much of the Exalted stuff takes place, probably around it as well, many jungle-style areas. I would point out that a lot of the stuff we saw in the trailer, actually, when you're thinking of Golden City, this was actually Verdant Brink stuff. So whatever's going on in the Auric Basin is probably, you know, an amplified version of that. And then lastly, you've got the Dragon Stand. Dragon Stand is probably where we currently see the region in-game as Magus Falls, where we've all been speculating Morgemoth would be. And that's about it. 4 maps, that's all we've got. And do you know what? I don't see any of these really as being north of Brisbane Wildlands. It really seems that tiny little chunk of the world that we see just near Ratasum is probably going to be what gets filled in and nothing else. Now, of course, there is a chance that because this is just data mining, that this isn't everything, that there are other maps in development. Obviously, not all maps have reward tracks too. Guild halls are going to be new maps coming into the game, fairly large maps that will not appear on this list. But at the same time, I think it would be wrong for us to include guild hall maps as regular PvE maps. I don't think they're going to have anywhere near the quantity of content that the PvE maps will have. I think they'll have like one kind of mission we do early, and then we'll probably spend a lot of time hanging around with them. But in terms of exploration, when the expansion comes out, they're not actually going to be worth that much. Each of these 4 maps, yes, we know are going to be a lot more dense with content. I'm wondering, guys, are you happy with Heart of Thorns having just 4 maps? And try to consider, when you give me your answer to this, how much depth these maps will have in terms of content. I'm not sure I am happy. I think my minimum... I mentioned my minimum in a previous video. I said, you know, 11 is over the minimum I would like to be happy. I think my minimum would be something like 6 proper explorable maps, and we're very much under that right now. Do you think there's a chance we'll see some more appear? I'd love to hear your guys' opinions, but yeah, maybe now we should shift ourselves into a mindset where we really do expect Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns to be an expansion, where previously in this franchise we got entire continents. For Heart of Thorns, we get 4 PvE maps. Let's have a talk about it. Thanks very much for watching, guys. I'll keep you in the loop. Tomorrow I want to talk about Glint, her signets, what she could be focused as a specialization, what she uses abilities in the first game, all that good stuff. So check that out then. Until then, have a great evening, guys. I'll catch you next time.